Hello everyone, once again I welcome you all at Nagesh Kazgi Orchard School TV channel. And students, today we are going to start the new chapter of the science lesson, that's name is air and water. Lesson number 4, that air and water. And as in like in all chapter, we also have to do study about various things in this topic. So what we have to study, look on the screen, that first of all we have to study about the atmosphere, the meaning of atmosphere. Then afterwards we have to study about the layers of the atmosphere, importance of the atmosphere, what does air contain, as we know that air contains so many things, then actually what are that things we have to study about. Then we also have to study about the properties of air, then atmospheric pollution, and at last we have to study about the water. And in this section we have to study about the methods of removing impurities in water, different methods which are useful to clean the water, that all the things we have to study in this chapter. So first of all we will start with the point, that is the atmosphere. So tell me, what is mean by atmosphere? Students, you know that air is all around us, that means in your house, outside of the room, on ground, in school, everywhere. That means air is all around us, but we cannot see the air. We cannot see the air. Ever you see the air anywhere? No. We can only feel the air. And one important thing about the air, that we cannot stay alive for more than a few minutes without air. Why? What are such things that air contains that is needed to us for living? Yes, exactly, that is the oxygen. Air contains oxygen, which all living things needs to breathe. So if we are not getting the air, if we are not getting the oxygen, then we cannot stay alive for more than a few minutes. Then as we know that air contains oxygen, and oxygen is needed to breathe, and that oxygen is present in the air, and air is all around us. So what is mean by the atmosphere? That air creates the atmosphere, that air makes the atmosphere. That means we can say in other word, the blanket of air that surrounds the earth is called the atmosphere. Here is the definition of atmosphere. So what is mean by atmosphere? The blanket of air that surrounds the earth is called the atmosphere, and it is several hundred kilometers thick above the earth or around the earth. It is about several hundred kilometers. We do not know exactly how much it is. That means it spreads in the space, but we do not know exactly how much kilometers thick it is. But the density or the thickness of the atmosphere is not the same throughout. That means everywhere that air is not the same. As we know that on ground level air is different, as we go upper or higher height or on the mountains, then we feel less air there. That means the density of the atmosphere or the thickness of the atmosphere is not same throughout, and it is thick near the ground and becomes thinner as we go up. Suppose we are on ground level, or at the ground level the density of the atmosphere is thicker, or the air is thicker or present in more amount. But as soon as we go up towards the mountains or in the space, then there will be less amount of air is present. So from that we can say that it is thick near the ground and becomes thinner as we go up until it fades to nothing in a space. And as the air becomes thinner, as you go higher, breathing becomes more and more difficult. That means on ground level you will be not getting any difficulties to breathe air, but as soon as you are or you are going to higher, suppose you are climbing the mountains, then you feel difficulty while breathing, and this is why mountaineers have to carry oxygen cylinders while climbing high mountains. High mountains such as Mount Everest or other mountains which are very highest, where they feel the difficulties in breathing. That is why they carry the oxygen cylinders along with them. So, this is the atmosphere and that atmosphere is made up from different layers. It is divided according to the availability or the thickness of the air in the space. According to that, atmosphere can be divided into several layers. Here on the screen you can see the layers of the atmosphere. There are 5 layers of the atmosphere, that are the troposphere, then the stratosphere, then the mesosphere, then we have thermosphere, and at last we have the exosphere. So, we have to study about in detail one by one. So, first of all we will see about the troposphere. So, what is mean by troposphere? Here on the screen you can see the layer which nearest to the earth's surface is the troposphere. What is mean by troposphere, or what is the definition of troposphere? The layer which is nearest to the earth's surface or ground level, above surface, is the troposphere, and it extends up to about 15 kilometer above the surface of the earth. From the ground level to above 15 kilometer we found this layer, the troposphere. And one more important thing about this layer is that this is the layer in which living things can breathe normally. That means, up to 15 kilometer height from the ground level or from the sea level we can breathe. From the ground level or from the sea level we can breathe easily without feeling any difficulties. But as soon as we climb up or we go higher, then we feel some difficulties in the process of breathing. And one more thing about this layer is that this is where clouds form, and due to that it brings rain and snow. Due to this layer, that layer is also called as weather layer also, and most weather changes takes place in this layer. As we know that weather is changing, sometime it is hot, sometime it is cool, sometime it is rainy. That means that all the weather changes are taking place in this layer only. So, this is all about the troposphere. So, what is meant by troposphere? The layer nearest to the earth's surface is the troposphere. Afterwards, we have the stratosphere. So, what is meant by stratosphere? See, the layer which lies above the troposphere is known as the stratosphere. What is meant by stratosphere? The layer which lies above the troposphere is known as the stratosphere. And like the troposphere, it also extends in the space, but it extends to about 50 kilometer above the surface of the earth. How much it extends? It extends to about 50 kilometer above the surface of the earth. And one more important thing about this stratosphere is that this is the layer where jet planes usually fly. This is the layer where jet planes usually fly. As we sometimes we see some planes are flying in the air, but jet planes which are useful in the wars are flying in this layer. So, this is about the stratosphere. Afterwards, we have the mesosphere. Mesosphere. What is meant by mesosphere? The layer that lies above the stratosphere. Where it lies? It lies above the stratosphere, is known as mesosphere. The layer that lies above the stratosphere is known as the mesosphere. And like the stratosphere and troposphere, it also extends, and it extends to about 85 to 90 kilometer above the surface of the earth. It extends to about 85 to 90 kilometer above the surface of the earth. And one more thing about this layer is that most of the meters burn up in this layer. What is mean by matters? Matters is a small piece of matter that enters the earth's atmosphere from space. What is mean by matters? It is a small piece of matter that enters the earth's atmosphere from the space, and that all the matters burn up in this layer. So, this is the mesosphere. Then afterwards we have the thermosphere, and the layer which lies above the mesosphere is known as the thermosphere. What is meant by thermosphere? The layer which lies above the mesosphere is known as the thermosphere, and it extends to about 500 to 600 kilometer above the earth. It extends to about 500 to 600 kilometer above the earth. And at last we have the exosphere, and the exosphere lies above the thermosphere, and it fades into space. Fades means to disappear slowly. That means we cannot see this layer clearly. That means it, why? Because it fades into the space. If you have book in front of you, then you can see picture of the lower layer of the atmosphere here. Lower layer of the layers of the atmosphere on page number 36. If you have textbook in front of you, you can open it and see. Here in this picture you can see this first 15 kilometer layer above the sea level or above the ground level is the troposphere. Then here you can see the stratosphere, but above the troposphere there is one layer of gas which is the ozone layer. We have to also study about that layer afterwards in this same topic. This is very important layer of the ozone gas which protect us from the harmful sun rays. So, this is the stratosphere, and above the stratosphere there will be the mesosphere, thermosphere and exospheres. So, this is the picture you can see in your textbook. Now, afterwards we have to study about the importance of the atmosphere. So, what is the importance of the atmosphere? As we know that atmosphere is made up of air, from the air, and air contains so many gases, example oxygen, carbon dioxide, ozone, nitrogen, argon, etc. So, we have to study about the importance of the atmosphere, and the atmosphere contains oxygen. First of all, most important use of the atmosphere is that the atmosphere contains the oxygen, and which all living things need to breathe. As we know that we need oxygen to breathe. Without of oxygen we are unable to live. So, this oxygen is present in this atmosphere. Then it also contains carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is used by plants to make food for the living world or for the living things. As we study about that in the process of photosynthesis in the topic plant life, that plants use carbon dioxide to make the food for living world, and that carbon dioxide is also present in the atmosphere. And the atmosphere absorbs a large part of the heat in sunlight. As we know that heat of sun is very higher, and if that sunlight falls directly on the human's body or on the earth's surface, it causes various diseases. So, atmosphere absorbs a large part of the heat in sunlight and prevents the earth from getting overheated. If that atmosphere is not present, then the temperature on the sun, temperature on the earth will be very high, and it is getting prevented due to the atmosphere. And at night it retains heat and prevents the earth from getting freezing cold. That is also an important feature of the atmosphere. It protects us from heat of the sunlight, and also it protects us from getting freezing cold also. And as I told you that before some time, that stratosphere contains a layer of gas called the ozone. Once again I will show here. This green colored layer which is present in the stratosphere is the layer of ozone gas. So, the stratosphere contains a layer of a gas which is called as the ozone. As we know that sun gives out rays, and which are known as ultraviolet rays, and that ultraviolet rays are very harmful to living things. Why? Because these rays can cause skin cancers and problems in the eyes or other skin related diseases, and we get protected from that ultraviolet rays due to of the ozone layer. And one more thing, important thing about the ozone layer is that the ozone layer absorbs most of these harmful rays and thus protect us the living things on the earth. So, in this way atmosphere is very useful to us. Then afterwards we have to study about the new point, that is what does air contains. What does air contains? As I told you before some time, that air is a mixture of gases. So, which gases make up the airs, or which gases contains the air? So, air contains gases, or air is a mixture of gases like nitrogen, oxygen, argon and carbon dioxide. So, nitrogen, percentage of nitrogen in the air is near about 78%, that means about 70% of the air is nitrogen. Then near about 21% is the oxygen, and only 1% is mainly argon and carbon dioxide. Totally 1% is argon and carbon dioxide, and air contains a small amount of carbon dioxide, very small amount of carbon dioxide, that is near about only 0.03%. 0.03% is the carbon dioxide present in the air. It is available in very few amount. Then also it is very important for the living world. Why? Because it is very useful to plants to make the food. As I told you before, sometimes plant uses carbon dioxide to make the food, and that carbon dioxide is present in very less amount. Then also it is very important. Then apart from these gases, air also contains varying amounts of water vapor. Varying amounts of water vapor means different amounts of water vapor, dust, smoke, etc. And that water vapor in the air comes from the evaporation of water in oceans. As we know that the process of evaporation due to heat of the sun, water on the earth's surface or water in the oceans started to evaporate, and that water vapors goes up in the sky or up in the space, and there they form the clouds. And so, water vapor in the air comes from the evaporation of water in oceans as well as rivers and from the lakes. And when there is a lot of water vapor in the air, for example, during the rainy season, we say that it is humid. So, the amount of water vapor in the air is called a humidity. That condition we called as the humidity. So, what is mean by humidity? The amount of water vapor in air is called a humidity. What is mean by humidity? The amount of water vapor in air is called a humidity. And during hot humid days, we feeling uncomfortable. Why? Because we get sweat a lot and our skin feels sticky. So, we feel uncomfortable during the hot humid days. So, all these things make up the air. That means, air is a mixture of gases like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, argon and carbon dioxide, and air also contains varying amounts of water vapor, dust and smoke. Afterwards, we have to study about the properties of air. In previous year also you had studied about that, and in this year also we have to study about the properties of air. So, these are some properties of air. You can see on the screen that air occupies space, then air has weight, then air exerts pressure and air is needed for burning. So, these are some of the properties about the air. So, we will be studying about it in detail. So, first of all we have to study about the first property of the air, that air occupies space. So, as we know that air is everywhere, and you also know that we cannot see the air. Why? Because it is in the form of gas. So, we are unable to see the air, but we can feel air. When we feel the air, we can feel the air when wind blows, or if we start the fan in the room, then we can feel the air. An empty cup or a glass is not really empty, it is filled with air. That means, if you are thinking that in the glass nothing will be there, but the glass contains air. Why? Because air is present everywhere. And here is an easy way to show that air occupies space, but due to some limitation, due to some technical reason, we are unable to show here the experiment, but if you can do that at your home in presence of your parents. So, here I will show only the diagram. Of that air occupies space. From that diagram also you can get the idea how exactly air occupies space. So, here is an easy way to show that air occupies space. First of all, you have to take an empty glass like this. You have to take an empty glass and pour water into it. Pour water into it, and water easily fills the glass. As we know that when we enter or when we fill the water in the glass, then water easily get filled in the glass. And what happens to the air that was in the glass before pouring the water? There will be the air. Then what happens to this air in the glass? That air gets escaped from the top as water fills the glass. Now, let us see what happens if we do not allow the air to escape from the glass. So, for that you have to take a bowl, like in this picture. You have to take a bowl filled with water and stuff the bottom of an empty glass with cotton wool. Here you can see this is the cotton. You can do that experiment at your home also. So, for that, stuff the bottom of the empty glass with cotton wool, then hold the glass upside down and push it slowly into the water without tilting. Tilting means without crossing or without moving to sloping position. Do not allow it to move or do not allow it to in the sloping position. So, afterwards what happens? Air now has no way to come out of the glass. Here air has no place to come out the glass, and carefully take the glass out of water. Afterwards, after some time, put out or take out the glass of water without tilting it, and fill the cotton at the bottom. Is it dry or wet? Dry or wet? What does this show? The cotton is still dry and water could not enter the glass, and air could not escape again. Here from here, this picture you can see here, from here air is not escaping. So, water is not entering in the glass, but again push the glass in the water. Again we have to push the glass in the water. Now, slowly tilt the glass, like in this picture. Start tilting of the glass slowly, then you will see bubbles of air escaping here. You can do that experiment at your home. You will see bubbles of air escaping water can now enter the glass and fill the cotton after taking the glass out of water. That time you will feel that cotton will be wet. Why? Because air is getting escaped and water is entering in the glass and making the cotton dry. So, this is in this way you can show the experiment, or from that you can show that air exerts air has or air occupies space. Then afterwards we have to see about the second property of the air, that air has weight. This simple experiment you can also do at your home. For that you have to tie a piece of string to the middle of the scale like this. Tie a string to the middle of a scale and take two inflated balloons. Inflated means same size balloons of the same size, and tie a balloon to each end of the scale and make sure that both ends of the scales are at the same level. Both ends of the scales are at the same level. Now, afterwards you have to prick one balloon carefully, so that all the air get escaped, and the end of the scale with the balloon filled with air will come down. You will see that here the balloon which is filled with air will come down, and it contains air and is therefore heavier. That air is getting escaped from this balloon, and that balloon has air and it also has a weight. From that experiment you can say that air has a weight. You can do that experiment at your home also. Then afterwards we have to see about the third property of the air, that air exerts pressure. This is also an simple experiment, but due to some technical problem or due to some reasons we are unable to do this experiment here, but these are all very simple experiments you can do at your home. So, third property, that air exerts pressure. For that, fill a glass with water up to the brim. This brim means the upper edge of the cup or bowl. Then carefully place a piece of stiff card over the mouth of the glass and make sure that no air is trapped between the water and the end of the card. So, hold the card in place with your hand and turn the glass upside down. Then remove your hand. You will find that the card will stay in place and the water will not flow out. How this is happen? This is because air exerts pressure on the card from below to keep the card in place. Here the pressure exerted by air upwards is more than the pressure exerted by water downwards, and if there had been air trapped inside the glass, the card would have fallen off because of the downward pressure exerted by the trapped air. So, what are the uses of this property? We can use this property for various purposes. So, for that by using this property we can drink cold drink from a bottle or from a glass. Then a medicine dropper and a doctor's syringe suck up liquid in the same way. Then we can pump air into the tire of our bicycle. So, by using this property of the air we can do these all activities. As I told, air is needed for burning. So, for that we can do one experiment here, and you also can do that experiment at your home, but in presence of only adult. You do not have to do that. For that you can take the help of your father or your mother. For that, for showing this property, I will do here one experiment. First of all, we take the candles, then burn the candle. Candle is going burning. Why? Because air is present all around the candle. That means oxygen is present around the candle, and that oxygen is helping that candle to burn. But as soon as we cover the candle or we stop the flow of stop the oxygen, then what happen? You will see that that candle is going off. Why this is? Because we cut the supply of air, we cut the supply of oxygen to the candle, then candle goes off. This shows that air is needed for burning. So, from that we can say that air is needed for burning. So, here with this point of the lesson we conclude our today's session here, and now we will take the short recap of our today's session. So, first of all we will study about the atmosphere, what is meant by atmosphere. Then afterwards we studied about the 5 layers of the atmosphere, that the troposphere, the stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere and exosphere. Afterwards we studied about the importance of the atmosphere, importance of the ozone layer. Then we studied about the what does air contains. Then at last we studied about the 4 properties of air, that air occupies space, air has weight, air exerts pressure and air is needed for burning. So, here with this point we will conclude our session, and we will meet soon with the next point of the session in our next session. Next point.